All right, so welcome. We're going to be diving into a case from Bermuda using excerpts from the actual court judgment. So this has been the deep dive.
It has.
Thanks for listening.
And thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
In this podcast, there could be mistakes, so please check the source material. Enjoy exploring and have a great day.
The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as legal advice and should not be relied upon as such. While efforts are made to ensure accuracy, the information discussed may not reflect the most current legal developments and is subject to change. For advice on specific legal issues, consult a qualified attorney licensed in your jurisdiction. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organizations they are affiliated with. By watching this video, you acknowledge and agree to this disclaimer.
All right, so imagine this. You've put your blood, sweat, and tears into your business, right? And now you're ready for the big time.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to merge with another company or sell it all together. Sounds pretty exciting. But there's one thing that so many people forget in all the hustle and bustle of contracts and lawyers and everything.
Yeah. What's that?
It's all the personal information that you've got.
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You got customer lists, employee records, all those people signing up for your loyalty program.
Oh, yeah.
It's a ton of info, and it all has to be handled really carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing how much data is tied to even like the smallest business deal these days.
Uh-huh.
You know,
It
so
really is.
It all has to be treated carefully.
Exactly. And that's why today we're going to do a deep dive into the Personal Information Protection Act of 2016.
Okay.
This act, it's all about setting the ground rules for protecting that personal information, especially when we're talking about these big business moves.
Right. And it's not just about protecting people, even though that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But this act is really about, helping build trust in business as a whole. When businesses show that they can handle information ethically and responsibly, it makes everyone feel a bit safer.
Right, because everybody's a little bit on edge these days about their information.
Yeah, for sure.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack exactly how this act protects personal information during business transactions.
Okay.
And believe me, you might be surprised by just how much this act actually covers.
Yeah.
You might think, okay, this only applies if I'm selling my whole business.
Well,
But what we found is even just exploring like a partnership with another business
oh, well,
that could trigger all these rules.
really?
It all depends on how they define business transaction.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. It's designed to cover a lot of different situations.
Yeah, like all kinds of things, where personal information is changing hands.
Uh-huh.
So let's just say I'm thinking about selling my bakery. What are some of the big things I need to know about this act to make sure that, I'm doing everything the right way?
Well, one of the biggest things to understand is that you have to get consent from people before you use their personal information in a business transaction.
Okay, consent, that makes sense. It's crucial. But what does informed consent actually look like in this case?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just like a quick signature on a form, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
The act sets a really high bar for consent. Think about it this way. You need to tell your customers exactly how their data is going to be used by the new owner.
Okay.
So, things like their purchase history, their email address, whatever it is, they need to know what information is being collected, why it's being collected, and who's going to have access to it.
So no hiding it in like the fine print of a 10-code legal document.
Exactly. Transparency is key. The act is all about clear communication so that people can make informed decisions about their information.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm just thinking, what happens if you've tried your best, but you just can't get consent from absolutely everyone?
Okay.
Does that mean the whole deal's off?
Well, the act does say that sometimes it just isn't possible to get consent beforehand. Like, let's say a company is suddenly acquired and there's just no time to go through the whole consent process.
Right.
In those cases, the people involved had to agree to some really strict limits on how they're going to use the information.
Okay, so they can still use the data, but only for very specific reasons related to the transaction.
Right.
That's good to know because I know things can move really fast in the business world.
Yeah, they do. And even in those cases, they still have a responsibility to keep that information safe and secure. The bottom line is that personal information always needs to be treated with respect and care.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
No matter what.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about getting consent,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of curious, what are some of the things that could actually go wrong? What kinds of things would be considered like breaking the rules of this act?
So the act lists a bunch of offenses, from little slip-ups to major breaches.
Okay.
One of the most common is actually trying to get personal information illegally.
During a business transaction?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say someone tries to hack into a database to get their hands on customer lists,
Oh.
before a merger's even finalized.
Oh, so no sneaky tactics.
Those sneaky tactics, that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And it's not just about, getting in where you're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
The Act also covers, like, if someone tries to get rid of data or mess with it on purpose to cause harm.
So if they're trying to, like, sabotage a deal by deleting important customer info.
Exactly, they'd be in big trouble.
Okay.
The Act also says it's not okay to block an investigation by the commissioner or to give false information.
Uh-huh.
So basically anything that looks like you're trying to hide stuff about personal information,
Yeah.
that's a big no-no.
So honesty and transparency are really important.
Yeah, for sure. The Act is all about being accountable and working with the authorities.
Right.
Now, as for consequences, breaking this Act can cost you.
Yeah, because I imagine the stakes are pretty high when you're talking about something like personal information.
Absolutely.
So what kind of penalties are we looking at here?
Well, there are a lot of different penalties, and they can get pretty big
Okay.
depending on what you did wrong.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about possible fines,
Yeah.
which can go as high as $25,000 for a person.
Wow.
And even more for companies. And in some cases,
Right.
you could even go to jail,
Oh, wow.
especially if you do it again and again or if you really hurt someone.
So this is serious stuff.
Yeah, it really makes you think twice about trying to cheat the system.
Yeah, for sure.
But beyond the legal stuff and the money, there's also your reputation to think about.
Right.
Like these days, people really care about data privacy and they don't want to deal with companies that have messed up with people's information.
Yeah, so it's not just about avoiding fines or jail time. It's about keeping your customers happy.
Exactly. It's about protecting your brand and making sure people still trust you.
That makes sense. Now, we've talked a lot about individuals and what they do.
Yeah.
But what about the companies themselves? Like, let's say an employee messes up and breaks the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Is the company in trouble too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Act is very clear about that the company is responsible.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's a director, a manager, anyone acting for the company, they can all be held accountable.
Wow. So it's not enough to just have like a privacy policy tucked away somewhere on your website.
Right.
You really need to make sure everyone in the company understands how to handle data responsibly.
Yeah. You have to create a culture of data responsibility.
Okay, but how do you actually do that?
Well, it's about having clear rules
Uh-huh.
and training your employees and making sure everyone gets how important it is to protect information.
Okay.
The Act actually wants companies to follow those codes of practice and really be proactive about data protection.
So it's not just going through the motions.
Right, you got to show that you're serious about protecting data.
I see. Now, let's say a company can prove that they did everything they could to prevent violations.
Okay,
Can they use that as a defense if something does go wrong?
that's a great question. And the Act does mention that there are defenses,
Okay.
especially if a company can show they followed the rules and did everything they could to prevent the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind, every situation is different, and there's no guarantee.
So it's not like a get-out-of-jail-free card,
Right.
but it does show how important it is to do things the right way from the start.
Exactly. It's about showing that you're really committed to protecting data, not just checking boxes.
All right, I think we've done a pretty good job of laying out the rules of the Personal Information Protection Act.
Yeah.
We've talked about what a business transaction actually is, why consent is so crucial, and what can happen if someone breaks the rules.
Uh-huh.
We even talked about how the act is enforced and what the commissioner does.
Hey, we covered a lot.
And I think the biggest takeaway here is that knowledge is power.
For sure.
Understanding these rules gives you the power to protect your own information, and it helps businesses operate ethically and responsibly.
Absolutely.
It's almost like we've moved from the Wild West of data handling to something more regulated and hopefully more ethical.
That's a good way to put it.
And it shows us that we're still learning how to navigate this new world of data privacy.
Uh-huh.
As technology keeps changing, so will our understanding of data privacy and the laws that protect it.
Yeah, that's a challenge that will be with us for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's something we all have a part in figuring out.
I feel like this act is almost creating like a ripple effect.
Uh-huh.
It's influencing this bigger cultural shift towards being more aware of data and being more responsible with it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about encouraging businesses to see themselves as like protectors of the data they have,
Yeah.
not just the owners of it.
Okay, but let's get real for a second. Rules are great on paper. But how does the act actually make sure that businesses are following them?
Yeah.
Are we just hoping for the best here?
Well, that's where the commissioner comes in.
Mm-hmm.
This act gives the commissioner the power to investigate, if there are any violations,
Okay.
and to issue orders and even take legal action if someone breaks the rules.
So there are actual consequences.
Exactly. It's not just a suggestion box.
Okay.
The commissioner is really important in making sure the act is actually being followed
Right.
and that personal information is really being protected.
So let's say a business gets caught breaking the rules.
Okay.
What happens then? Is it an instant fine and they're in trouble?
Not exactly.
Okay.
There's a process to make sure things are fair.
Uh-huh.
The commissioner looks into everything really carefully, gathers all the evidence,
Okay.
and then figures out how bad the violation was.
So it's not just a snap judgment.
No, there's a whole process.
There's due process.
Exactly. And the goal is to make sure the consequences fit what happened. Sometimes the commissioner might just give a warning
Okay.
or tell the business to fix the problem
Right.
instead of going straight to fines or taking legal action.
So there's some education involved, too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just about punishing businesses, but about helping them do better with data.
Exactly. That's a big part of the act.
Mhm.
It's not supposed to be just about punishment.
Uh-huh.
It's about setting a standard and helping businesses to be more responsible.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive, I have to say.
Yeah.
We've gone from the basics of the Personal Information Protection Act to all the specifics about consent and offenses and penalties.
Sure.
And we even talked about what the commissioner does.
It's been great.
And I think the biggest takeaway for our listeners is that they have a say in this.
Yeah.
You have rights, and you can demand that your information is treated with respect.
Absolutely.
And for all the business owners out there, the message is pretty clear. Data privacy isn't just about following the law. It's about building trust with your customers and having a good reputation.
That's so important these days.
It really is.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about. As technology keeps changing so fast and blurring the lines between our real lives and our digital lives, how do you think these privacy rules will have to change to keep up?
Wow. That's a big question.
It is. It's something to think about as we all try to figure out this world of data.
Definitely. This is a challenge we'll be facing for a while.
Yeah, and it's one that we all need to work on together.
Absolutely.
In this podcast, there could be mistakes, so please check the source material. Enjoy exploring and have a great day.